He arrived with my son on a humid Friday afternoon, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his gaze fixed on the floor. I barely caught his name when my son introduced us, muttered quickly like he didn't want attention. He looked younger than my son, though he probably wasn't. Clean-shaven, soft-spoken, and polite to the point of discomfort. He answered every question with a yes ma'am or no thank you, avoiding my eyes the whole time. He didn't talk much during dinner, just nodded and smiled weakly. My son, full of stories and energy from school, filled the silence, and I let it go. Some kids are just shy, I thought. But something about him lingered in my mind long after the dishes were done. Maybe it was the way he glanced up when he thought I wasn't looking, or how he stayed behind to help with the plates when my son went upstairs. When he handed me a towel to dry the dishes, his fingers brushed mine. He flinched first. I didn't move. It was nothing but coincidence. But it stayed with me longer than it should have. That night, I lay awake longer than usual. Not because of him, I told myself, but because of the quiet. It had been growing louder in this house. My husband barely spoke to me anymore. Everything between us had become mechanical. Dinner, bills, routines. My son had grown up, and the house felt emptier even when it was full. I hadn't felt seen in months. Years maybe. The next morning, I found him alone in the kitchen. My son had gone out for a run. He was making coffee, fumbling with the buttons like he didn't want to ask for help. I showed him and he laughed, quiet and warm. I hadn't heard that laugh before. We sat for a moment. Silence again, but different. Comfortable. Then he said, "You have a nice place. It feels safe." A strange word from a young man barely out of his teens. I smiled and thanked him, brushing it off, but it stuck with me. That evening he helped me with dinner again. Not because he had to, my son was right there, but because he wanted to. He cut vegetables beside me, careful, focused. He didn't speak much, but he was present. Later, when everyone had gone to bed, I checked the hallway. Quiet. I wasn't sure what I expected to see. But as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I paused. His door was cracked open slightly, just enough to catch his profile in the glow of his phone screen. He looked up. Our eyes met for a split second before I turned away. I told myself it meant nothing. He was just a kid. My son's friend. But I hadn't felt that look, honest, searching, in a long time. And maybe that's what scared me most. The next few days moved strangely. I caught myself noticing things I shouldn't. How he lingered when I spoke. How his eyes would dart to my mouth when I was mid-sentence. He never said anything inappropriate, never crossed a line, but there was an energy building between us. Quiet, persistent, unspoken. And I was noticing it because I wanted to. One afternoon, I found him in the living room, alone, flipping through a book. I asked if he was okay. He nodded but didn't meet my eyes. I don't talk much. People think it's weird. I told him it wasn't. That some people speak better in silence. He smiled just for a moment and something shifted. That evening, I wore a dress I hadn't worn in a while. Not for anyone, just for me, I told myself. He noticed. I knew because he looked away too quickly, like he was ashamed of looking in the first place. And I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in so long, wanted. My husband was barely home. When he was, he didn't notice anything. Not the dress. Not the smile. Not the mood. He spoke in monotone, scrolled through his phone during dinner, and disappeared to bed early. If he noticed the boy's presence, he didn't care. My son treated his friend like a brother. Trusted him. That trust only added to the guilt curling inside me. One night I found myself in the kitchen again, unable to sleep. He walked in quietly like he had heard my thoughts. "Couldn't sleep either," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. We stood close, the air between us thick. He looked at me for a moment too long. "You seem sad sometimes," he said. I almost laughed, but I couldn't. No one had said that to me in years. "You're very observant," I replied. He didn't smile. "Only when it matters." His voice was soft, unsure. I should have walked away. But I didn't. The next day he brushed against me again. Light, fleeting but deliberate. And I didn't flinch this time. I looked at him. Not like a child, not like my son's friend, but like someone I saw. Really saw. And I saw the confusion in his face, the want, the restraint. Mirrored my own. I started questioning everything. Why I was letting this happen. Why I wasn't stopping it. I hadn't planned it. I didn't look for it. But it was here right in front of me, breathing, waiting. And still I did nothing to end it. My son remained oblivious, full of stories, laughter, and plans for the weekend. He trusted both of us. And I hated myself for what I was allowing to form in the shadows. But when he looked at me again that evening across the room, with a look that held questions he didn't dare voice, I felt myself answer without speaking. We hadn't done anything. Not yet. But the line was already behind us. It happened the night my son decided to stay over at a friend's place. He texted late, said not to wait up. The moment I read the message, I felt something shift. Not panic, not relief, just inevitability. The house was quiet. My husband was away for work. It was just the two of us. He came downstairs to grab water. I was already in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine I hadn't planned to drink. I offered him one. He hesitated, then nodded. We sat. No words, just sips. The silence was louder than any conversation we could have had. I asked how he was really doing. He looked at me, then down at his hands. Better when I'm here, he said quietly. Safer. Seen. I felt my breath hitch. Those words again. And I hated how much I needed to hear them. I looked away, but he didn't. I notice things, he said, voice low. You're always doing everything for everyone. I don't think anyone sees it. He wasn't flattering me. He wasn't trying to seduce. It was just the truth, delivered with a kind of raw honesty only the young still possess. Something gave way. Not suddenly, but slowly, like a dam cracking under pressure you've ignored for too long. I reached out first. Barely a touch to his hand, but it was enough. His fingers curled around mine, gentle, cautious. No rush, no force, just connection. The space between us disappeared without needing to be closed. He leaned in, unsure. I didn't stop him. The first kiss wasn't dramatic. It was soft, testing, filled with fear and something like longing. I should have pulled back. But I didn't. I leaned in, deepened it, surrendered to something I'd pretended I wasn't feeling. Every movement after that was a choice, one I made without hesitation. Not out of lust alone, but something deeper. A hunger for closeness, for being held without judgment, for being wanted in a way that didn't feel like obligation. It wasn't wild. It wasn't rushed. It was careful, almost reverent. His hand shook. Mine didn't. I guided it. Not because I was in control, but because I needed to feel something real, even if it came from the wrong place. After we didn't speak for a while. The quiet was thick with reality sinking in. He looked at me like he wasn't sure what he had just done, like he wanted to ask if I regretted it, but was too afraid of the answer. I didn't give one. I just stared at the ceiling and listened to the sound of my heartbeat, louder than it had been in years. He touched my hand again, tentative. I didn't pull away. Not yet. The guilt hadn't landed, but I could feel it circling. I knew this wouldn't stay hidden forever. I knew I had crossed a line I could never uncross. But in that moment, all I could feel was that for the first time in a long time, someone had actually chosen me. The next morning the light felt too sharp. He was already up, dressed, sitting at the kitchen table like nothing had happened. But something had. Everything had. He didn't look at me the way he did before. Now it was loaded with something else. Fear, attachment, uncertainty. I could barely meet his eyes. My son returned around noon, joking, cheerful, completely unaware. The guilt didn't ease. It deepened. Every word he spoke, every laugh we shared, felt like a blade twisting deeper. I avoided his friend as much as possible, kept myself busy, distanced. But he followed me with his eyes, quietly pleading for something I couldn't give. Later that night he knocked on my door. Not bold, not desperate. Just soft, like he didn't want to scare me off. I opened it barely. He whispered, "Are we going to pretend nothing happened?" I looked at him and for a second I saw the boy again, the one who'd been shy, lost, kind. Not the one I had crossed a line with. I told him it couldn't happen again. "It meant something," he said, eyes wide, voice cracking. "Didn't it?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Anything I said would be a betrayal to someone. He started avoiding my son. Stayed in his room more. Quietly, left quickly. My son asked if he was okay. I shrugged, lied, said maybe he was just homesick. But I knew what it was. He didn't know how to carry the weight of it. Neither did I. My husband came home a day later. He didn't notice anything. Asked a few basic questions, then settled back into his usual routine. He never saw the way the boy flinched when he walked into a room, or how I stiffened when they were both around. He never really saw me at all. On the last night before they were set to leave, the boy found me alone again. He didn't say anything. Just looked at me with the kind of sadness I couldn't fix. "You changed something in me," he whispered. "I'll never be the same." I wanted to say I was sorry, but the words wouldn't come. Because I wasn't. Not entirely. When they packed up and left, I watched from the porch. My son hugged me. The boy didn't. He glanced back once, then got in the car. Felt final. Days passed. Then weeks. My son mentioned they hadn't talked much since the trip. Said his friend was acting strange. I told him maybe he just had things on his mind. We never spoke about it again. Kept the secret. Buried it where no one would ever find it. But it still lived there, just beneath the surface. Sometimes at night, I'd remember the way he looked at me. That first night, that last day. And wonder if he hated me, missed me, or still thought about me at all. I didn't do it for love. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I was seen. For once. And sometimes, being seen costs more than staying invisible ever did.